What is it about an old house set way back in the country that is so enchanting? Is it the old creaky floors? A familiar smell? For some, visiting a historical home may be about bringing to mind the idea of a more peaceful time. Or for others, it may be about finding a connection to the past. Welcome to the James Peller-Davis property located in South Carolina. In this video, I will be talking about the home and those whose footsteps once graced its floors. I became interested in this house after seeing it in a photo and being told that it still existed. I was intrigued and pleasantly surprised to find out that my dear neighbor Zula Huey, who passed away in 2008, once called this place home. Zula was as close to an angel as you can get this side of heaven. She retired from Timpkin in 1983 and was influential in getting the local volunteer fire department started. She was an avid quilter and a devoted member of Sardis Methodist, where she took me to Vacation Bible School on several occasions. What I remember the most about her was her gentle demeanor and her wonderful laugh. She was married to Bill Huey. He was a World War II naval veteran, a proud father, and an all-around great person. While I only got to know him later in life, as a younger man, he was praised for his carpentry skills. Today, Bill's work can still be seen throughout the town, in my childhood home, and in this one. Zula was born December the 16th, 1921, to Charlie Ray Davis and Mattie Mae Peller-Davis. Zula had 4 sisters, Ethel, Hattie, Christina, and Carrie. Zula also had 2 brothers, Charles T. Davis and James Alfred Davis. Both of her brothers served in the military. Charles in Korea and James, more commonly referred to as Jimmy, during World War II. Charles eventually moved away and started a family in Mooresboro, North Carolina. However, Jimmy stayed in the area and married Lonnie Bell Parker. She was the daughter of Johnny Parker, a farmer, pulpwood dealer, and member of Abington Creek Baptist Church, and Elizabeth Pennington Parker, later referred to as Granny Parker. She was a farmer, homemaker, eventual widow, and member of Kirby Memorial Church. Eventually, Jimmy purchased this house and 126 acres from his mother in 1941. Before that, Jimmy made a living cutting lumber. But after purchasing the house and land, he began to raise white-faced heifers and black Angus. Besides this, the homestead at the time kept a milk cow, plowing mule, horse, hogs, and chickens, as it had done since its construction. While Jimmy and Lonnie were raising their 4 children, the house began to change. In 1958, electricity was added, then a clawfoot tub, followed by a more modern bathroom, and eventually a back bedroom. By the time Lonnie passed in 2023, the land associated with the house had decreased, as the family had long since stopped raising livestock. In addition, when Lonnie passed, she left behind 11 grandchildren and almost 20 great-grandchildren, of whom I am sure visited here. As mentioned, prior to Jimmy Davis, the house belonged to his mother, Mattie Mae Peller-Davis. I am unsure of the time frame in which she owned the house or the land that she owned with it. I do know that Mattie purchased the dinner bell visible in the side yard during a sale of her father, James Madison's home goods. In addition, I know that Mattie was born in 1889. of James Madison and Christina Martin Peeler. Maddie grew up and married Charlie Ray Davis, and they ended up moving to Oklahoma, where she had several children before coming back and raising her family here. I am unsure of why they moved to Oklahoma or why they came back, but I do know that relatives such as Doc Moore lived in Oklahoma. When Maddie's children were young, Doc Moore would come to visit in his old town station wagon. Maddie's sons would run outside and pick maypops and herbs for him to take back. Also, he would stock up on sodas like Cheerwine to take back with him and sell. When Maddie's children were older, she and her husband Charlie gave each child a trunk. As of right now, Jimmy's trunk can still be found in one of the home's upstairs bedrooms. Eventually, with the coming of grandchildren, Maddie was lovingly referred to as Grandma Davis. She was known for her love of knitting and crocheting until her death in 1976 at the age of 83. Today, some of her blankets and crafts are neatly folded and still stored within the house. Prior to Maddie, the house belonged and was built by her parents, James Madison Peeler and Christina Martin Peeler. James Madison was a well-known and respected farmer, as was his father. He built the home for his family in the early 1900s. Online, it states that the house was built in 1907, but I feel this may be incorrect. In fact, there is one account that James Madison's daughter, Ethel, was born inside the home in 1906. Originally, one of the chimneys had an engraving of the year in which the home was built, but today it is no longer visible, either due to wear or past chimney repair. I am unsure how much land James Madison owned while he was living here. However, I have been told that it was believed to be around 350 acres. Around the house, you can still see an old smokehouse, shed, and a barn. In fact, hay and old farm tools are still visible within the barn today. The land also boasts a beautiful pond, which was probably useful for watering livestock. It also probably offered the Peeler and Davis children of the past swimming and fishing opportunities. While James Madison's wife Christina passed in 1926, it's reasonable to suspect James Madison still lived here during that reunion photo that was taken in 1927. Interestingly, by the time James Madison passed in 1937, he had 92 grandchildren. Prior to James Madison and Christina building the home, the land may have originally belonged to his father, John Rufus Peeler. J.R. was the second child of Anthony and Marianne Lockhart Peeler. Marianne was the daughter of Patriot John Lockhart and Mary Margaret Patrick Lockhart. On the other hand, J.R.'s grandfather was Daniel Peeler, who married Louisa Leake. Louisa's father was also a patriot, and he owned a large plantation at the river crossing Cherokee Ford. J.R. was a farmer just like his father Anthony, and his grandfather Daniel, and his great-grandfather Anthony, and his great-great-grandfather German immigrant Michael. J.R. was also a part-time school teacher. As a young man, he married Sarah Ann Hambright, who was well known in her own right as the daughter of Revolutionary hero and farmer teacher Colonel Frederick Hambright. In fact, in a previous video about the Patrick Cemetery, where J.R. is buried, I mentioned that Sarah was buried near her father, but this was an error. She is actually laid to rest at the Peller Cemetery number 1. Together, J.R. and Sarah had one child, the previously mentioned James Madison. While J.R. did not have slaves, he did fight for state rights, as did his brothers Daniel Marion, J. Newton, Daniel Smith, and Anthony Jasper. He enlisted under Company F of the 15th South Carolina. J.R. fought from 1861 until he was forced to surrender in 1865 in Greensboro, North Carolina. After surrendering to Sherman, he ended up at Point Lookout, Maryland, where his brother David Smith had also been a prisoner of war. Upon being paroled, J.R. returned home, having lost a finger and several family members, including Anthony Jasper, who perished in the First Battle of Winchester, Virginia. His brother-in-law, John Franklin Patrick, in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and John's brother, Robert. In addition, he also lost several cousins, including Green, Richmond, Marion Gilkey, who died on leave at home sick, Andrew Dixon, and Aaron Washington Peller, who died in Richmond, Virginia. After Sarah passed away, while their son James Madison was a tender age of 9, J.R. remarried Martha Mattie Blackwell, and together they had 9 children. J.R. lived out his life, residing very near his beloved son James Madison, near this beautiful property. To conclude this video, I'll be reviewing the people I've talked about in a little more detail. Johannes Bueller. While I didn't mention him earlier, he is the father of German immigrant Michael. Johannes brought Michael and his brothers Jacob and David to America on the ship the Molly, which docked in Philadelphia on September the 30th, 1727. At that time, he and his family settled in Pennsylvania. Michael Peller. Michael Peller married Margaret and fathered Anthony, Michael, Peter, Andrew, John, Louis, and Elizabeth. Michael and his family took the wagon road in 1748 to the Yadkin River in North Carolina. For context, Daniel Boone and his family didn't do so until 1752. On May 17, 1776, Michael enlisted in the Revolutionary War as corporal. In 1783, he was granted 200 acres on the Reedy branch of the Second Creek near today Rockwell, North Carolina. In his older age, Michael helped raise funds for the Lower Stone Grace Reformed Church, which his son Michael helped build. And it is believed that he and his son Michael are buried there. Anthony Peller, 1734 to May 1804. For context, he was born the same year as Daniel Boone. In 1779, Anthony moved to what would be upstate South Carolina on the Broad River. His home was only a few miles east of the Cherokee Iron Works. Anthony married Barbara and fathered Isaac, Jacob, Daniel, and Richmond. Later, Anthony married again. Anthony is buried at the Cherokee Falls Peller Family Cemetery, while his second wife, Anne, who was born in 1740 in Germany and died in 1850, is buried at the Peller Cemetery number 1. Daniel Peller, 1783 to April 28, 1840. To understand what a pioneer Daniel was, you have to understand that Davy Crockett was not even born until 1786. Daniel married Louisa Leake, daughter of Patriot John Leake, granddaughter of Sir John Lake of England. His wife died April 24th, 1840. Daniel and his wife are both buried in the Cherokee Falls Peller Cemetery. Together, Daniel and Louisa had Aaron, Anthony, Daniel, David, Elizabeth, Matilda, Mary, Christina, and Louisa. Anthony Peller, December 28, 1808 to February 26, 1847. Anthony married Mary Ann Lockhart Peller. Together they had Lavinia, John Rufus, Daniel Marion, Jane Newton, Mary Ann, David, and Jasper, who was their baby, who was born in 1847 and died in the Civil War. While Anthony was buried at the Cherokee Falls Peller Family Cemetery, Mary Ann Lockhart was buried at the Patrick family burial grounds. Mary Ann's father, John Lockhart, and her mother, Mary Margaret Patrick, are also with her. John Rufus Peller was born April the 15th, 1833. John Rufus and his family were living in the Wilkinsville area close to his son James Madison at the time of his death on May 28, 1907. He was a member of Smyrna ARP Church. He had walked to a nearby store in Wilkinsville and walked home, after which he sat down in his chair and passed away from a heart attack. He was buried next to his sister, Mary Ann Christina Peller Patrick, in the old Patrick Cemetery. His first wife, the previously talked about Sarah Ann Hambright Peller, was born February 3rd, 1870, and passed away in 1899 around the age of 28. She was the mother of James Madison and is at the Peller Cemetery No. 1. John Rufus's second wife, Martha Mattie Blackwell, was born June 8, 1858, and passed away on February 16, 1936, at around 77. She was the mother of Rufus, Leela, Christopher, John, Erskine, Mary, Aya, and Carrie. Mattie lived 30 years longer than J.R. and is buried at Abington Creek. James Madison Peller, January 27, 1861, passed away in March 1937 at around the age of 76. He is buried at the Patrick family burial grounds near his wife Christina. I only recently found out that the land that he purchased was originally Katie West's land. She inherited it from Luvisi Peller Corey White Wofford, and she had one daughter named Sally, who married a Jeffries. Christina Martin Peller was born on May 31st, 1869, and passed away on April 4th, 1926, around the age of 56. She is also in the Patrick Family Cemetery, as I mentioned previously. Her mother and father, however, are buried in Blacksburg. Her father, Thomas Alexander Martin, was born February 26, 1831 in Smyrna, which is the smallest town in South Carolina. He passed away on December 30th, 1882 at 51. He is buried near his wife, Pamela Ramsey Martin, who was Christina's mother. She was born on April 8th, 1833 in Smyrna, and passed away December of 1912 at around the age of 79. They can both be found at Hopewell Baptist Church in Blacksburg, South Carolina. However, Christina's grandparents, Morgan Martin Sr. and Jane Ramsey Martin, were both born in York County, which at the time extended farther as Cherokee County had not yet been formed. These Martins can be found in the Martin Family Cemetery, which is in Smyrna, South Carolina. And Christina's great-grandparents, Micah and Morning Martin, are buried there, as well as her grandparents on her mother's side, John Ramsey and Sarah Smith Ramsey. Next, I will be sharing some information about James Madison's children, some of whom stayed at the home. After which, I'll share some information about Maddie Peeler's husband, Charlie Ray Davis, and his side of the family. Finally, I'll finish the vlog by sharing a little bit of information about some of the children of Charlie and Maddie Davis. I will be excluding Carrie as she is still alive and I do not want to give out any of her personal information.